Hello coaster people, this is G-Force Rush, and in today's video we're going to be talking about my most recent coaster project, Vanta Forest Run. This was an indoor coaster for my main No Limits park. If you just want to see the POV that's already up on the channel, it should pop up on the top right corner of your screen just about now if you want to go see that. Basically, my park in No Limits had a family gravity group wooden coaster, an RMC hybrid, and a B&M dive coaster, but it was just lacking a launch coaster. I had an idea of the plot of land where it was going to go into, as you can see here. And at first I was thinking an Intamin motorbike coaster, kind of like Quantum Accelerator at Six Flags New England. Is that something that opened up pretty recently? And I saw it and I was like, okay, that could go here. And eventually, recently learning how to use AutoCAD and designing buildings, I was like, what if I make this an indoor coaster? So then I started thinking about maybe rides like Flight of Fear or other like Spaghetti Bowl, just very compact indoor coasters. I took the dimensions of the plot of land, brought it over to AutoCAD, pretty much designed the building. Then I went over to Fusion, created the 3D model of the building, which I know you can do in AutoCAD, but I'm more used to Fusion for that. I just used AutoCAD for the drawings and overall kind of brainstorming the structure of the building. And as soon as the building was a 3D model in No Limits, I got to working on FVD and creating the layout. I had some concepts of the layout which I had developed earlier on in Ultimate Coaster 2. The first one immediately brought up this idea of a balcony in the building where you could look inside and, or at least see part of the ride and see people riding, and maybe that could be an incentive for more people to ride. It also had 3 inversions, and the main difference between this and the second concept that I'm about to talk about is that the station was right in the middle of the building for this concept, which is just overall not very efficient. If you're going to be surrounded by track and the station is right in the middle, there was no room for queue space or like an actual like station walled off area. So in the second concept, I moved the station over closer to the wall where there was obviously now room for a queue and whatnot. This second concept had just 2 inversions. The main one that I'm going to point out is this long heartline roll, which made it to the final concept. And then the third concept had 3 launches. It had the first and second launch stacked right on top of each other the way the tracks are positioned, which did also make it to the final concept, as it is efficient in space and probably more realistic when it comes to an engineering perspective. Obviously the proportions in Ultimate Coaster aren't perfect, so the layout ended up being a bit more compact and intense than originally planned, as the building and pretty much everything, I overestimated the space originally, which resulted in, to be honest, a more intense layout, which is nice. As you can see here, the FVD layout was pretty much just a mess of track. It's very, very compact. And some of the main modifications that this finalized layout had from the last concept I created in Ultimate Coaster. First of all, the outdoor section was longer. Once again, the building was smaller than I had originally planned, so I decided to extend that outdoor section. One of the inversions was now outdoors. The brake run placement, which pretty much makes sense. If the layout wasn't an original clone of that third concept, I pretty much already had in mind that the brake run was going to be placed differently depending on where I had room at the time of the layout ending, pretty much. And also, the third concept had a mid-course brake run at the tallest point of the ride after the third launch, which you pretty much just rolled through. And later on, with theming and everything, I ended up turning that mid-course into a place where you come to a full stop and then you launch out of that track. It was pretty much a scene related to the theme of the ride. When the layout was completed, I pretty much started block testing. The first launch happens from a complete stop, so if there was an E-stop and it had to relaunch from there, the train it's designed to be able to relaunch from there. The second launch, if the train is to come to a stop at that launch track, it is still able to make it all the way to the third launch. Not as fast, but it is able to make it from where the train stops if it has to come to a stop at that launch track. The third launch was shorter, as it is right after a drop, so I knew the launch track didn't have to be as long to get you up to speed. So if the train comes to a stop here, then this would be the one part where yes, there would have to be a swing launch backwards and back forth, or what I ended up doing, which also worked, is pretty much just rolling this train slightly to like the beginning of the launch track, and launching from there is also enough to get it to, is actually the highest point of the ride, which is that mid-course brake run / fourth launch. In that section after the third launch, it goes into the tallest point of the ride at 60 feet tall. The building is 77 feet tall. It was originally going to be 75 feet tall, but I gave myself an extra 2 feet to deal with the ceiling support structures and whatnot. When designing the outdoor section, I also made sure that the ride would interact with something else within the land, since this coaster was going to be the headliner of a new land within the park. It ended up being just a turn around an enterprise ride from No Limits. I also had ideas for other flat rides in the land, so I went over to Fusion and designed an art engineering wild swing and some Sierra Rides frog hoppers to add to the land. Obviously these can't move, they're just 3D models, but for concept they do the job and they're pretty cool. They fit in the land very nicely, and they add a variety of family rides for a land that's headlined by a very thrilling attraction. Later on, I also decided to add this broken looking watchtower to the land to pretty much help build an atmosphere within the land without having to be on the actual coaster. Now after this, I also had to design the support structure. Once again, the first and second launch are stacked, so those share a support structure to save costs. Overall, I didn't have any problems really like fitting in supports, even though the ride is very compact and quite the mess of track. The support structure ended up making quite a bit of sense and went along pretty well. The ride does use just Intamin's single spine track. There's only one part that uses the double spine apart from the actual launch tracks, and that is a curve going up into that mid-course brake run, because there's a lot of track under that piece of track, so I wasn't able to play as many supports as I wanted, and it is a pretty fast high G-force moment, so I wanted it to be as reinforced as possible, so I added the double spine track for just that section. After the coaster was done, obviously theming. Went back to Fusion. I made some like quick queue/express signs, which were designed, the hallways and the queue space for the ride were designed into the building from the beginning, along with obviously the station area, which is walled off, and a storage area where there is a fourth train. The ride runs with 3 trains, but there is a fourth in storage in case one is ever going through annual maintenance. When it comes to theming outside the ride, I already mentioned the rides. Going back inside the ride, there's just a lot of trees inside that building. I truly tried to make it seem like you're going through this dark forest, which is the theme that I'm about to get to. There are also plenty of colorful lights throughout the ride for different parts of the ride, 4 fog machines, and 3 flamethrowers at the end of the ride to add intensity to the end of the story. And the station is made to look like a wooden cabin. I pretty much got some benches from No Limits, put them all over the roof, which ended up looking actually pretty nice. Yeah, the theme of the ride is basically you're going in a dark magical forest, or you don't know it's dark, but you're going in a magical forest, stuff happens, you gotta run out of there. If I were to have a full team of like voice actors and everything, the full original theme idea was to have like the trains look like police cars, and the onboard audio would be like a cop being like, oh my god, there was a case of people missing in this forest, let's go check it out. And then you end up discovering some crazy stuff in that forest, and you have to run out of there as fast as you possibly can. Now, as much as there's not voice acting and onboard audio, there is onboard audio. When it comes to music, I created a custom soundtrack for the ride. Just got some guitar, bass, and drums. Made some sounds. It's definitely very metal, very high energy. It goes along with the ride, and overall it turned out being much better than I expected. The queue area is pretty simple. It's a long hallway that leads back to the station, since it's at the back of the building, and there's just one main zigzag section at the front of the line. When you're exiting the ride, pretty much the exit ramp is also where people with like skip the lines would go. There isn't a load and unload station, so if you had to skip the line, you would go up to the station from the exit side, which isn't being used because there is a separate unload station. There's also an area when you leave the station, where you can purchase your photos right before you go out. I made some screens and a little desk on Fusion that was pretty quick. Overall, the ride, the pre-first launch area was heavily inspired by Hiccup swing gliders. There was also some elements that were definitely inspired by the more modern Vekoma family coasters like Big Bear Mountain at Dollywood. The ride has just about 3,500 feet of track, 4 launches, originally 3, but that mid-course turned into a 4th, 2 inversions with that slow roll and a pretty quick stall/cutback, depending on what you want to call it. It has 4 cars per train. Originally I was thinking 3, but once again, for high capacity, I brought it up to 4, just like Velocicoaster has 6 instead of 5, like Pantheon or Two Tatis over in France. So anyways, that's a lot of yapping about engineering stuff. Here's the POV. Hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you want to see more like long explanation videos and whatnot, feel free to comment down below your thoughts on this ride and what you want to see on the channel. If you like what you see on the channel, feel free to subscribe. Here is Vanta Forest Run after about 2 months of work. Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy.